All right, I'm Kim Adamski, HIV Prevention Specialist at the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. The Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective is in Hartford in the South End on 1841 Broad Street. We have a clinic for STD testing and sexual health. We have dental services. We have health education and a bunch of different support groups. In Manchester, we have a food pantry and a group for people with HIV. And I mean, right now we're doing a lot of our education virtually, which is why you're here today, presumably. And today we are doing a presentation because of Teen Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Sorry, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And the folks from the New Britain YWCA are here to give a presentation. Sophie Kulowski is the youth advocate and Rachal Conley is the LGBTQ advocate. So if you guys could just introduce yourselves in a little more detail and get started, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we are going to be presenting a little bit about relationships today, talking about some healthy and unhealthy traits for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and just in general. And I am Rachel, I'm the LGBTQ advocate. I'm so happy to be here, and it's great to see you again, Kim.
Nice to see you too.
Awesome. Yeah, hi, I'm Sophie. As Kim said, I use she, her pronouns, or they, them, theirs. I am the youth advocate, so that means I work with people under the age of 18, but not just that, if there's other people. And yeah, thank you so much for having us, HGLHC. I'm really excited to present about this topic because I feel really passionately about that. And I know Rachel does, and I'm sure Kim does as well. So thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we can jump right into it. Let's get started.
Awesome. So we like to start all of our presentations out by kind of just giving an overview of what the YWCA Sexual Assault Crisis Services provides, some of the services we provide. So we do have a 24-hour crisis hotline. Those are the numbers on the screen. It's in English and Spanish. It is completely free and confidential. And all of our volunteers are super empathetic, caring, and just really non-judgmental. It's a great resource. We provide crisis counseling, which means it's short-term counseling, which is around 12 sessions usually, which we can do grounding techniques, safety planning, anything that you would like. We have support groups for specific populations. So we have like a men and boys group. We have groups for people under 18. We have groups for secondary survivors. We advocate for survivors. So we accompany people to the court system, police stations, things like this, just to make sure that they understand the process smoothly and that their rights are being respected. And then we do prevention education. So things like this, you know, just teaching to the community about the topics that affect all of us. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we serve anyone that has experienced sexual assault. You don't have to be the primary survivor. And if we don't have resources, we'll help you locate whatever it is that you're looking for. Like I said earlier, I'm the LGBTQ plus advocate. I work with the LGBTQ plus population. So I can go into schools, like if you're under the age of 18 in K through 12 schools, I can talk to you there. I know a lot of it's virtual, but you know, we can figure it out. So we, you know, work a lot with other organizations like HGLHC and other organizations to provide this kind of education. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Like Sophie said, we're both really passionate about this.
For sure. Another thing that we like to start our presentations out with are just some self-care techniques and kind of like a trigger warning. So the things we talk about can be kind of heavy sometimes. So if you feel a little overwhelmed or like you need to take a break, we highly encourage that. Take time for yourself, put yourself first always. And I always like to say, even after I give these presentations, you know, I like to have a little self-care moment. Even though I talk about this all the time, it's always a great idea. So those are just some ideas, but you know, any way that you can make yourself feel better, watch TV, sit in silence, read a book, whatever you want. It's just a nice little reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about like relationships and, you know, especially in the context of teen dating violence, it's just important to kind of remember like what relationships are and that they're, you know, made up of these agreements or traits, behaviors, or expectations from all the participants involved. And these are like mutually agreed upon things. things that, you know, all the participants in the relationship have kind of an equal say in. And they're going to be kind of different from different types of relationships. So when we think about all the different relationships in our lives, you know, it's not just, you know, partners or intimate partners. You know, we have friends, parents, siblings, relatives. There are relationships with our peers and teachers, professional relationships to our coworkers, and even within the context of, you know, intimate relationships, there are a lot of different ways that people feel connection or love, and all of these different types of connection are of course valid, but they're also going to come with different types of agreements and expectations. So when we think about different types of love, you know, there's romantic, emotional, intimate, physical attraction, and all of these things can kind of exist separately. So it's just important to remember that every relationship is going to be super unique, and you're going to kind of figure out these agreements within the context of those specific relationships. But as we talk about unhealthy and healthy types of situations, it's important to remember that there are, you know, always going to be things that are unhealthy and abusive.
Definitely. So I also agree with Rachel, you know, like all relationships are unique. We're all unique people, which means that our relationships are unique to each different one. So definitely what Rachel is saying. So kind of healthy versus unhealthy. So I think a lot of times, you know, when we talk about relationships, it's either, oh, this relationship is super healthy or this relationship is super unhealthy. But we know that that's not the case. A lot of relationships have many characteristics of being healthy, and then some characteristics of being unhealthy. So things that are really unhealthy, you know, are violations of agreements or expectations that you guys have set forth, inappropriate behaviors or harmful traits are signs of unhealthy behaviors in a relationship. So, and then repeated boundary crossings are abuse. So it's really important to set boundaries within your relationships for your own happiness, for your partner's happiness. And it's important to make sure that those boundaries are respected and watched. And basically what I just like to say, you know, is in healthy relationships, both partners have equal opportunities and they have equal power in setting the boundaries and expectations. So it really veers more into the unhealthy territory when only one person has more power. There's only one person who's deciding the boundaries, expectations, things like this. So it's really just important to keep in mind that it's not just healthy versus unhealthy. Most relationships do have some components of both, but it is, of course, important to track the unhealthy parts in your relationship to make sure that it doesn't veer into the territory of abuse.
One thing that I want to add that I've noticed in like HIV counseling and stuff is that a lot of the time people are reluctant to label abusive behaviors as abusive because the abuser isn't all bad all the time. Yeah. Obviously, there would be no appeal to staying with them if they were all bad all the time. So I think it's really hard for people to understand that a person who's good sometimes can also be abusive other times.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why we like to recognize, you know, that not all relationships are 100% healthy. And obviously, if your relationship is 100% unhealthy, you know, that's a red flag. But it's definitely, I think, hard for some people to admit that, you know, something is unhealthy, but we are all human and we all do make mistakes. So it's definitely important to remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we want to remember that when we're talking about relationships, we're talking about these sets of, you know, agreements and expectations, these different behaviors. So it's not that like a person is bad or like, you know, you do something wrong in a relationship and it condemns you forever. It's that that's an unhealthy behavior, an unhealthy trait. And it's not to say that if you do that, because we all do it, it's not to say that if you do that, you can't get any better. Part of being a person is learning those unhealthy things in the context of all different relationships and recognizing them and figuring out how to change and grow. And it's really important to recognize that in our intimate relationships, but it's also important to understand that there are some things that the behaviors are abusive. They cross that line between unhealthy and abusive. And there are certain things that, you know, people need to address on their own. So you're never responsible for fixing someone or for helping someone address their issues or for taking on the responsibility of someone when they are perpetrating abuse against you. And I think that point kind of leads really well into this analogy. It's my favorite analogy. It's why there's a frog up at the top, so I always remember it. But it's that if, you know, if you put a frog right into a pot of boiling water, the frog is going to immediately jump out because it's going to recognize the danger. But if a frog is in a pot of water and the heat is turned up slowly and incrementally, the frog will boil alive because it doesn't recognize the slow changes in the environment. So that's kind of like what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. You don't really recognize all these different little things, these red flags maybe, or these unhealthy traits or behaviors that maybe seem small or seem like something that like, oh, this is a normal thing that people have to work on to get better, but really they all culminate to create what ends up being a really unhealthy environment. And it's that point that like these relationships aren't just always bad, because you would never stay in a relationship that was always bad all the time. And once it gets to the point where it is, you know, just miserable day in and day out, someone has already invested so much time and energy, you know, they don't want to feel like a failure. And they also probably have, you know, lost a lot of the supports that they had in their lives. So it's important to remember this spectrum that relationships exist on, and that even if you are in a relationship that is mostly healthy and is no abuse, like there are a couple unhealthy traits, like it's important to address those and work on those, so we don't end up turning something into abuse. And it's not to say that like abusers don't do it intentionally, but oftentimes, you know, we don't do things that are unhealthy intentionally. So for example, communicating is one thing that like is so important in relationships. We talk about it all the time. And I've heard of a lot of situations where it's like, you know, we have really great communication. We always communicate really well. Even when there's disagreements, we communicate. But, you know, when my partner gets stressed out because of something related to school or work, they just explode and they like get into this, like, I can't talk to them about this certain thing, or like I can't approach them when they're in this certain state of mind. So it's hard to kind of see that one trait, communication, in this different light. You're like, oh no, but we have good communication, but there's obviously this unhealthy part of it as well. So these traits exist themselves on a spectrum, and within your relationship, you can have both healthy and unhealthy styles of communication depending on, you know, the context or the situation. So that can be really hard to kind of dig through on your own and figure out, you know, is this abusive? Is this, you know, too many repeated violations and boundary crossing, or is this kind of the normal course of figuring things out? And that's a good opportunity to look for support.
Awesome. That was very well said, Rachel. I think the frog analogy really like works well in this situation. I don't really, I mean, I understand why, but it's kind of a random thing, but it works perfectly. So one of the things we like to talk about, you know, when talking about healthy and unhealthy relationships are some of the traits that can be seen as warning signs potentially, and the things that are kind of the opposite, which are signs of healthy relationships. We just had some pictures of examples of some relationships that we kind of felt were healthy, unhealthy. The Shameless example I'm not too familiar with, but Schitt's Creek, I mean, I know a lot of people love Schitt's Creek. I love Schitt's Creek. And David and Patrick, we thought were a pretty good example of allowing a good pace, respecting your partner, communicating openly. But so as we've been saying, you know, relationships aren't always straight healthy, straight unhealthy. There are a lot of traits that can make up healthy and unhealthy. So, and they can be, both can be seen in the same relationship. It can be hard to tell if it's overall healthy or unhealthy. So it's like really important to know these signs and learn these traits that can help you like evaluate the situation more. So some of the warning signs, you know, intensity, possessiveness, manipulation, isolation, gaslighting, sabotage, belittling, guilting, volatility, deflecting responsibility. I do think, you know, betrayal is, we always put that as the last, because it's kind of, I think when a lot of people think of betrayal, if you and your partner have decided to be in a monogamous relationship, you know, the biggest betrayal is cheating, if that's your course of action for that relationship. So it's just really important to keep a watch of these signs. I also like to talk about intensity. You know, if you bring up a feeling of yours that's valid, or you just want to talk about something small and your partner reacts in a way that's frightening or maybe just over the top, that's definitely a sign of intensity. So the things that you deserve, you know, comfortable pace. So, you know, you guys go at a pace that you guys are both willing to, if it comes to even, like, it doesn't just have to be, I think a lot of people think about sexual stuff, but it doesn't just have to be about sex. It can be about, when you're comfortable meeting each other's family, or hanging out with your friends, anything. Trust, so that's kind of the opposite of betrayal. If you have full trust in someone, then they shouldn't betray you. Honesty, independence, respect, equality, kindness, taking responsibility, healthy conflict, attraction, and I think fun is a really important one, because I think that a lot of times we don't discuss that in a relationship. And of course, like we've said, no relationship is 100% fun all the time, but it's really important just that you are with your partner and you can have a good time, and not worry about other things in your life, and you're just having a good fun time, and it's not stressful, it's not bringing you sadness, although like we said, relationships can be sad sometimes, but it's definitely just a really key part that you definitely have fun within the relationship and with your partner. So these are definitely just really important signs to keep track of. And like we said, everybody's human, so possessiveness can be sometimes natural. Like we're all jealous, we're all human, sometimes we get jealous, and sometimes possessiveness is the way that we react to that jealousy. But it's just really important to think about these traits, if you're showing them, if your partner's showing them, and how to veer away from them. So, okay, I'm being possessive because I'm a little jealous of my partner's friend. Let me think about why I shouldn't be possessive, because I trust them and because we have fun together and I respect them and I respect that they will make a choice that's best for both of us. So yeah, these are just really important signs to watch out for and to remind yourself of always within a relationship.
Yeah, and it's great to remember too that these are not only things that you want to look out for in potential partners, but also within yourself, because no one's perfect. Of course, possessiveness or intensity can sometimes be things that we fall into as well. And like we said before, sometimes an unhealthy behavior happens because we are raised and, sometimes we see unhealthy models, or, we have unhealthy representations, and it's in addressing that behavior and kind of working on it that we kind of become better and we grow as people. It's only in these repeated kind of violations that we veer into the abusive kind of category of things. So when we're thinking of things that you deserve, these are all things that you deserve in a relationship, but also things that your partner deserves in a relationship. So when we're thinking about things that we're wanting from relationships, we should also be thinking about things that we're able to give and contribute to a relationship. And this is not to say that if you don't love yourself, then no one can love you or something, or you have to be perfect to be deserving of this kind of love, because everyone is deserving of this type of love, independent of, who you are, because all humans deserve, respect and things like that. It's just that we should all be striving to give this to one another, because it's what each other deserves. It's what makes up a happy and healthy relationship, and we should want that reciprocity. It's not about oh, you owe me what I give to you. In a healthy relationship, you don't feel like you're trying to even each other out or one up each other. It's genuinely about wanting the other person to feel safe, happy, and comfortable, and you feeling that way as well. And I think it's important to remember, on the wrong thing, important to remember that when we're thinking about queer relationships, there's sometimes different warning signs. So we talk about warning signs a lot, but sometimes we're leaving out a lot of relationships that are extremely valid, especially when we're thinking about the lack of resources. So if we're not talking about these warning signs, we're not recognizing them as abuse or as unhealthy things, it's hard for us to sometimes see the relationships that we are in as unhealthy, or the behaviors that we're perpetrating as unhealthy. So here are just some examples. And of course, again, every situation, every relationship is going to be different. You're going to have different boundaries, and we all have to communicate those openly and effectively to have them respected. And we deserve to kind of take action if they're not respected. But it's important to kind of look at these as an outline, because something misusing your partner's pronouns is abusive, unhealthy. It's a violation of trust, and it's psychological violence. Your partner's pronouns. They, if they're ever misusing your pronouns, or you're ever misusing your partner's pronouns, it's an intentional thing, and it's very hurtful. Or threatening to out you to someone that you're not out to, regardless of who it is, because it doesn't matter, what anyone else thinks, including your partner. That includes their family, your family, friends, professional relationships that you might have. If you're ever in a situation where someone is, not, or maybe not even like threatening to out you, but like trying to convince you to out yourself, or making you feel like you're not valid if you don't out yourself. Anything like that is unhealthy and abusive, borderline abusive. Again, abusive and unhealthy can it's like a Venn diagram almost, but it's about these repeated violations. So if this happens over and over again, like the first time it's unhealthy, and then maybe you address it, and then it doesn't happen again for a little while, and it's like, it's still a little unhealthy, but it's happening over and over. Or if it's happening every day, it's abusive. So attempts to invalidate your identity, again, by, saying that you have to act or behave a certain way to exemplify a certain gender or a certain sexuality or something like that. Disrespecting physical boundaries, like especially when we're thinking in relation to like gender identity and sexuality. If there are things like a binder or something like that, that is like part of your person. Like that is a physical part of your person. For your partner to like disrespect that or use that in a disrespectful way, or maybe violate a boundary that you have that's specific to your body, is abusive within the context of these types of relationships, even though it might not look like abuse from outside. And your partner knows that too. So just because other people might not see it as abuse, or they might have that validation from people that don't understand queer relationships, that doesn't mean that it's not abusive. And then finally, dictating again how to best portray your gender identity or sexuality, telling you that you have to have sex a certain way to qualify as a certain sexuality or a certain gender identity, or that you have had done something. Like I know that there's like a lot of invalidation of bisexual individuals because they haven't been with enough of something or someone, or done enough of something, so it's just a lot of kind of invalidation can be seen as a manipulation tactic. And we talk about this all the time as ways that people outside of the community can kind of treat us, but this can also happen within the context of intimate partner relationships. That internalized homophobia is really strong sometimes, but you don't have to deal with that from a partner just because we all had to go through it,
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that I've been hearing on social media in particular is the idea of not being trans enough and people invalidating trans identity that way. Like, I mean, I don't really know what would be not trans enough, because if you identify as trans, you're trans, but like, or the idea of even not being gay enough, or like you said, invalidating bisexual folks because they are currently with somebody of a particular gender.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so
it's just so weird because like the whole idea of, the queer community is the idea that like you get to identify yourself. Like gender and sexuality are individual identifications that you get to choose. So for anyone to sit here, especially within the community, and be like, you're not this enough because of this, it's just like, this is the exact opposite of the thing that we're supposed to be doing. So, especially when that's happening in the context of a romantic relationship. But like we talked about before, if your friends or parents or anyone, is doing these types of things, like these are unhealthy behaviors and repeated violations that can lead or be abusive.
Yeah, I also think sometimes it can be super hard within the queer community, because if you feel like your queer partner is, disvalidating you, you feel so accepted by that community, and you are part of this community that you like, I want to be a part of this, I want to be accepted, and then someone within the community is disvalidating me. I think that can be a real blow to someone's self-esteem. And also just, especially, like we live in Connecticut, we do have a small population in general. So that means that our queer population is smaller, and the community is a little smaller. So I think that there's also sometimes fear of saying this person, was abusive or unhealthy towards me, because people fear like kickback from others within the community. So that's definitely a problem with just having like a small community, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be really hard for that reason to address these things, and even kind of admit to ourselves, like a lot of this can be, oh, I don't want to believe this person really meant it this way, or, said it this way. But you feel that uncomfortability, and like, the only thing that I can say sometimes is like to trust yourself, because like your instincts are there, and you know, you get that tingly feeling like, oh, that didn't feel really right. I didn't love that. And like it's important to think about these things and talk about these things. And sometimes that outside perspective can really help open your eyes as well.
Definitely.
So we have a short clip. So sorry. I'm
Rachel's crazy.
I don't know how to mute myself because I'm presenting.
It's okay, Rachel. I'll take it from you. Gotta calm the dog. It's okay. So we just like to you know, put in this clip from New Girl. I don't know if anybody's seen the show. It's really cute show. I love the show. It's just a sweet moment, and we're discussing relationships, and a lot of stuff that we are discussing, is between intimate partners, but we just like to highlight, you can be in healthy and unhealthy friendships as well. And so these signs, these traits, these warning signs are also can be seen in relationships that aren't intimate partners, with your friends and with your family. So this is just a nice little clip of what we thought was like a sweet moment that just, shows like a healthy friendship, which is always important to see as well.
I love that clip. It's just so sweet. It's adorable.
It's so sweet, and it's pretty funny. I would recommend that show. It's a good one. But it's a great example of, we can be healthy with our friends. And if you see your friends struggling with relationships or with, intimate partners, it's always just good to remember that we can be such a great support system to our friends. And it's just always great to be there for someone that you really care about and you love. And it doesn't just have to be someone that you're intimately involved with.
We do just want to go over quickly to what the cycle of abuse can look like. Went from like a high note real quick to a low note. This feels like a little bit of a roller coaster, so kind of unhealthy, as we've talked about before. But the cycle of abuse is important to recognize, because a lot of times these unhealthy behaviors and traits and these repeated boundary violations can happen in this pattern. And if we can recognize it in our own relationships or in other relationships, it can be a little bit easier to understand like both why people stay, but also kind of how it happens and why we kind of fall into this cycle. So, usually there's this like period of tension building, things get a little bit tense, there's like pressures and, everyday life, of course, but in these situations, it's going to be like a little bit heightened, and your partner, so when things are like a little bit weird, or like when they're a little bit on edge. So typically the person that is the victim of the abuse is going to be feeling like they're walking on eggshells. They're going to be feeling like there's something, but they're not exactly sure what. And then there's going to be an incident. And like this can be like a real incident, like a real actual big thing, like an argument or something, or it can be like nothing that the abuser can use as an excuse. And this can kind of start off verbal, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. And this can happen in the context of, anger, intimidation, threats, or other forms of abuse, other forms of those unhealthy behaviors that we talked about. And then after the abusive incident happens, there's sometimes this like honeymoon phase where the abuser will apologize. Maybe they like love bomb, sometimes it's called, where they're just like show you so much affection and forgiveness, or they'll beg for forgiveness, and they'll show you basically like who you fell in love with, and why you're with them. All this kind of reassurance, promise that it might never happen again. And then there's like a little bit of a calm phase, and it kind of feels a little bit normal, and you forget about the incident and kind of move on. And then it kind of re-enters with that tension building phase. And it's important to remember, of course, every relationship is going to look different, and this can look different in every relationship. But in abusive relationships, some of these phases are going to shorten. So like the honeymoon phase, it's going to start out being really good, and then soon it's going to be smaller and smaller until maybe there's no honeymoon phase at all. There's no like, I'm so sorry I did this. It's just like, this was your fault. And then you forget about it, and then the tension starts building again. And then, that calm period may become shorter too, and the tension period may extend. So it's just like tension for really long stretches, incident, short calm, and then tension again. And it's not like this thing that can be like put into a formula or anything. It's just important to remember that like when you're in these situations, your brain kind of gets highlighted, your neural patterns get highlighted in a way that kind of gets you accustomed to the cycle of abuse, you and the person that's perpetrating it. And that's why it can be hard to escape the situation and then hard to break those patterns once you are out of the situation.
So I actually found that, actually, let me mention a quick personal story. I knew somebody a while back who was in a relationship with an abuser, and he was known to be an abuser, unfortunately, but you know, you can't make anybody do anything. They're an adult. So the way that a lot of those of us who were like trying to pay attention to, you know, make sure we could offer resources if needed, figured out that he was probably abusing her was actually when he would post on Instagram about how wonderful and beautiful and how he doesn't deserve her, etc. So like we kind of got clued in by him being like you said, love bombing, the honeymoon phase. And later we found out that he was doing some pretty horrible stuff. But that's kind of a way that I have learned to clue myself in to being a little suspicious, which is kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah. And it's like that thing that people say all the time, you know, like social media is this fake representation, but like we also don't know people's relationships. We only know what they show us and what they portray to us. And of course, if we're close, sometimes we get to see a little bit more, but even with our friends, like they're only telling what they, you know, what they really want to at the end of the day. And part of abuse is the abuser making you feel like it's your fault, making you feel guilty, isolating you. So all of those things kind of work to make it so we're not telling people when we're in these abusive situations. And then people are only seeing this love bomb, this honeymoon, the calm phase. They're seeing us being really invested into someone. So obviously we must be really in love with that person. Rather than sometimes what's going on behind the scenes, which is like you were talking about, this abuse, this manipulation, and this front. And like, not only does that love bomb her into thinking like, oh, this person really cares about me, but also it kind of like makes everyone else like kind of see your relationship and puts this pressure on you like, oh, I have this perfect relationship. I have to live up to this expectation. I have to kind of be that person that I'm putting out there on social media that everyone else thinks I am. If people think you have a perfect relationship, it's a lot harder to be like, oh, it's actually very abusive. I never clicked on the right thing.
I also think it kind of ties back into the frog example. You know, most abusive relationships aren't, yeah, perfect tie-in, aren't abusive 100% of the time. You know, like we said, it often starts out in a slow manner. So it's definitely really important to kind of think about that cycle. But like Rachel said, you know, over time, it usually gets faster and some parts are skipped. So it's definitely like the slowly turning up of the boiled water. Okay, so, you know, how do we become in healthier relationships? How do we become a healthier partner, a healthier friend? And one of the things I like to start this off with, you know, is it's called human error. So, you know, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect, but it's always just a growing opportunity. And this is like anything in life, you know, even something as simple as like driving. Like I got my driver's license when I was 16. I wasn't the best driver. And that you slowly get better over time because you learn how to drive, you learn how to read the roads, you learn how to read other cars. So things like this. So stuff like that is applicable to your relationship as well. So relationships do take work. It's never anything that's going to be super easy, super amazing all the time. It's not like a job. It shouldn't be like forced, but it definitely is something that you always want to work on and you always want to better yourself. And it's for you and for the other person or people in the relationship. And they're definitely learned. So we learn about things from our role models, from TV, from books, from our peers. So the skills that we learn from our relationships usually are learned from others. So if you find yourself, you know, constantly doing a lot of unhealthy things, it might be a good way time to, you know, step back and be like, where did I learn this? So maybe my parents weren't the best example of a healthy relationship, and you kind of have to learn how to change your actions or learn what is best for you and for your partner. And then basically there's patterns of inappropriate behavior that are red flags. So like we said, no relationship is 100% healthy. There's definitely always times, every relationship you argue, every relationship there's fights, but it's the way that we react and we adapt to situations that can help us have healthier relationships. If your partner, even we were talking about specific examples for the queer community, like if you use your partner's pronoun wrong one time and they say, hey, like, I didn't like when you misgendered me, and then you apologize and you're like, I'm so sorry, it was a slip of the tongue, you can grow and learn from that situation. But like we said, if it's a constant, always misgendering someone, always using the wrong pronouns, that's when it becomes super unhealthy, because like I said, we all make mistakes. And once you make the mistake, you recognize the mistake you made and you learn from it and you grow better to support you and your partner's relationship so that it becomes healthier.
Yeah, and I think, with learning like how to be better and whatnot, it's important to be accountable and communicate our boundaries and needs. And like sometimes we don't know our boundaries until someone does something and we're like, oh, well, that was like a little uncomfy. Like I think that crossed a boundary I didn't even know that I had. And so we're constantly like learning and evolving even within ourselves. So we have to allow our partners that grace. We have to allow them to explore their boundaries and communicate them as they come up. And then also do that with ourselves. So, in healthy relationships, like partners are going to argue or disagree sometimes, but, they're going to take responsibility, feel remorse, and make genuine efforts to improve and understand each other. And I think it's important to remember that, like, if you ever feel like there's like a winner or a loser, like that's not an equal situation or like a healthy situation. In healthy relationships, like no matter what you're fighting about, even if you feel like you're 100% in the right and like your partner is 100% in the wrong, it sucks to fight with someone that you care about. Like it really doesn't feel good. So like when you fight, even if you feel like your points are, accurate and you're justified in what has been said, you still feel bad because your partner's hurting and you're hurting because you're fighting with your partner. So you're making that genuine effort to understand in an effort to get better. And it's not in an effort to win or an effort to like one up someone. And this is in all the different relationships that we talked about, but especially in the context of like intimate partner relationships.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of times, like with that analogy of winning and losing, if we're gonna compare it to like sports or a game, like you guys are on the same team. So you're always on the same team as your partner. If you guys are winning, you're winning together. If it's a hard time, you guys are having a hard time together. You never want to be on opposite sides of the team. You never want to be fighting for who's in the right and who's in the wrong, because in most situations, not just in our intimate partner relationships or relationships in general, no one's ever 100% right and no one's ever 100% wrong, because all of our feelings are valid. So there's definitely truth to both people and both sides whenever there are arguments.
Yeah, and like I think sometimes too, like we talk about being equitable, like sometimes you can't give 100% all the time and like your partner picks up that slack and that's okay. But I think what's important is that you're both always 100% of the time being open to learning and growing and being reflective on your relationship and yourself and being accountable, because it's a lot to always be giving your all to everything, but like being accountable is really important. And if you're letting, yourself slide in one area or another, or your partner slide in one area or another, that's when these unhealthy or abusive repeated boundary violations can happen.
Mm-hmm. So ways that you can, help others when you kind of see some red flags within a relationship. So, like in the new girl thing, it's always important to look out for your friends and their feelings. And it's nice to, think about you are in someone's support system. So it's just nice to think about, I can help my friend, even if I'm not a part of the relationship, if I say, hey, I don't want you to be with them anymore, like everyone should be empowered themselves and be able to make their own decisions. But there are definitely ways that you can help your friend without putting your own feelings and your own opinions onto the matter. So like speaking only for yourself. So, if you do want to confront a friend or family member about their relationship, it's important not to tell them how they feel or how the partner feels. It's important to say how you feel about the situation, and never, say why aren't you feeling this way? Like never judge anyone for feeling the way they're feeling or wanting to stay in a relationship. It's just important to show them that it is affecting you as well and others as well. Try using humor. So we know that these situations and conversations can be awkward sometimes, and a lot of people within an abusive relationship don't want to hear about it. So sometimes if we keep it light, a little humorous, it can be an easier way to crack open the shell, to have the discussion. Let the perpetrator know their actions. So, if you think it's safe enough for you to tell them, and for their partner, if you know the perpetrator, you can say, hey, like, I don't think it's okay that you're treating so-and-so this way, or I keep noticing that you do this, and I don't think it's okay that you treat them that way. That's definitely a really great way to do it. But yeah, like I said, just like making sure that everyone in that situation is safe when you do bring it up is really important. Calling out problematic behaviors. So, if you do see something, and again, this is if you're comfortable and if you feel safe enough, if you're with a couple or something and you see something, you can, slightly say, hey, like, that doesn't seem like the greatest, or you shouldn't talk to someone that way. And that's definitely a very easy way that you can kind of make the perpetrator aware. And as we said, before, like, we're human, we have errors, and these things are learned. So the person doing what you might see as like super unhealthy might not even realize that it's unhealthy. So sometimes just saying, hey, that's not really a good thing to do, can kind of flip someone's switch and have them realize, oh, maybe it's not good to, look through their phone or dictate their time with who they spend it with. And then I think it's simply easy, just kind of educating someone on why it's problematic behavior. That's a great option.
In terms of safety, I just want to mention that while obviously we want to try to, when possible, avoid involving like the police and stuff, because that can sometimes go poorly. If somebody's in immediate danger and you can't safely involve yourself, you should still call 911. So.
Yeah, and there's like also like there's mobile crisis and things like that, but like you said, like you have the ability to kind of decide in the moment what's right for you and what's not right for you. And when it's coming down to your safety and other people's safety, like there's no way to be like, this is the right way to react, or this is the wrong way to react. So it's really hard to make blanket statements about what you should or shouldn't do in those. So like definitely like 911 is an option for an emergency for a reason. And I think too, with like the calling out the problematic behavior, and you mentioned like the whole like, oh, like maybe don't go through someone's phone. Like it can be a great way too to talk to our friends about things that they're doing that might be a little bit unhealthy. Because sometimes, like we said, like sometimes it's not that our friends are the victims of unhealthy behaviors, that they're the perpetrators, because we all have sometimes unhealthy traits. And having those conversations can sometimes open people up to things that they hadn't thought about. I used to be one of those people that was like, oh yeah, going through your phone, like it's totally fine. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with someone that got me thinking a little bit differently about like how it affected me and how it affected the relationship to have this dynamic where I didn't feel secure unless I could have access to everything. And this person didn't have really any independence from me. So thinking about it a little differently made me kind of understand like, oh, it's not about trust. It's not about like this person trusting me. It's about me wanting this control. And so I think too, this leads kind of right into the relationship self-care. It can be really important when you're in these unhealthy situations, if you are the perpetrator or the victim, to understand like there are a lot of different ways to approach this, and it can be so overwhelming at first, but some possible things that you could do would be to like write down your thoughts and emotions. This is my favorite thing to do because I have a horrible memory. So I'm like, I know I've been feeling weird for a couple of days, but I can't remember what I was feeling like 3 days ago, what I did that. Yeah, or like if I'm feeling like really emotional about something, it's really upsetting, I like to just like push it away as soon as I'm done feeling it. So it's like, yeah, I know that was stressful, but it wasn't that bad. Or like I kind of just like get into a pattern. But if I'm writing down things and looking back like, oh, 3 out of the 7 days this last week, I felt really overwhelmed, or like I felt like I just didn't want to do things that I normally love doing. It can kind of help you keep track of like, there are more bad days than good. There are more bad things than good. I'm getting way more jealous than I should. And like, you don't have to write a whole journal entry or anything like that. Like figure out a way that works for you. I put the notes app there because I will put things in my notes app. Like if I'm, thinking certain intrusive thoughts that are leading to unhealthy behaviors in my relationships, I'll write down in the notes app, like, I thought this today because, you know, I heard this song and it made me think this way or something like that. And it's helping me keep track of things that are triggering for me, or ways that I can kind of look out for this before they can kind of come up. So you can also talk to someone else, and like, it doesn't have to be someone you know. If you're feeling like you can't talk to anyone, that could be a sign of these unhealthy behaviors and that isolation that we talked about. So if you're ever feeling like, I'm embarrassed or ashamed, so I can't talk to someone, like, it's so hard when you're at that point, but you deserve to talk to someone, and it's never your fault for being in an unhealthy situation. And the very fact of feeling like you can't talk about a relationship is a sign that you need a little bit of support. So you can reach out again to like us or like strangers. Like, there are strangers that are on these like certified, like, you know, hotlines, these text services, chat services that you can talk to that do not know you, that will never talk to you again, that like have no idea who you are. So there's no judgment there. They're not going to like tell your parents or your friends what's really going on. They're just someone for you to like get your feelings out to. And honestly, even just like getting them out can help you sort through them a lot better. And then finally, like, if you are feeling unsafe, like, just make a plan. Like, I'm not telling you you have to do anything. You don't have to leave or you don't have to do anything, but like, just make a plan. So that way, if something does happen, you know what you're going to do, or someone else in your life knows what you can do, or like, you know, like, I can always call this person. It doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m. and they will not ask me questions. They will pick me up. They will Venmo me $50 so I can get an Uber, like whatever it might be. Figure out what that plan is. And if you can't figure it out yourself, call us and we will help you figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. I also think one of the things I do like to add, if you're not at this point in the relationship yet, but you know, take time for yourself always. Self-care and relationship, you know, if you're in a relationship where you can't be alone, where it's an issue, that definitely is first off a red flag. But I just, you know, we are still our own people within relationships, so it's always important to, you know, make time for yourself in a way that just involves you. It could be a friend or something that you go out with, or, you know, just treat yourself to a little self date. I like to talk about that sometimes too. So I love self date.
Yeah, that's such a good point too. And like, I have a really anxious like attachment style. So when I get into like new relationships, it's really hard for me because I'm like, I want to spend all my time with them. Like, I don't want any independence. And that's like overwhelming for them. But then like, I get this burnout and I, you know, can be irritated or agitated. So like, sometimes maybe you don't even like necessarily want to be away from them, but like, you know, like, as a human, like, you cannot spend 7 days with someone in a row because you need to like get your life done and like have a little bit of space and like, you know, just be a person for a minute. And there's nothing wrong with like taking space for a day or for a couple hours or whatever it might be. Or if you need more space, doing that as well. It doesn't mean that you don't care about someone or that someone doesn't care about you if they want their own personal space. But like we talked about, you can always call us. And then there are a couple of other supports here. Love is Respect is a really great resource, and you can like chat online or text them. The Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence is based in Connecticut, and they have like member centers all over the state. So when you call the hotline, you'll be connected to someone that's a little bit more local, the same way that our hotline works. And then obviously the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective is a great resource, and their website, I was just on it, is super great and has a bunch of information about all the different programs that they're currently running and support services that they provide.
And I'll be putting all this contact info in the video description too, so it's easy to access for viewers later.
Awesome. Also, the Love is Respect website has a lot of great resources. They have safety planning sheets. They also have like a survey you can take talking about your relationship, and it can kind of tell you if you know it's healthy and regular, or if you know you've kind of crossed the line into abuse. So that resource is really great. I love Love is Respect. So yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having us, Kim. And like I said, please reach out to us if you have questions or if you need help safety planning, or if your friend is in a situation and you don't know if it's unhealthy or whatever it might be. Like I said, if we can't help you, we'll find someone that can help you. We love talking about this stuff. So even if you just want us to come to your school or your club or whatever it is and give this presentation, I could give this every day of the week and be thrilled.
Very true, Rachel.
Does anyone have any questions for Sophie or Rachel now? Because I can start off with a question. So my question is, I've heard people say that if you don't fight at all or argue at all in a relationship, it's probably not a healthy relationship. What is your take on that?
I can go first, Rachel, or do you?
No, you
Okay.
go first.
I mean, like I said previously in the presentation, you know, I don't think there's a lot of relationships that don't have any arguing. Like I said, we are separate entities, so nobody is completely the same. We all have different opinions and viewpoints on things. I think if you have no arguments, I wouldn't say that it's unhealthy, because I mean, that sounds like a great relationship. I would love to be in a relationship where there's no arguments. But I do think that it's natural, and if you haven't had an argument yet, like you probably will over something along the line, because as your relationship grows and you stay together longer, you know, more things get tied into it if you live together, if you have a family. So I definitely think that most relationships do have arguments. I wouldn't say that if you don't have any, it's unhealthy, but I do think it is healthy to have a little back and forth once in a while, because we are individuals and we all want to be heard from our viewpoints.
Yeah, so I think that this is one of those statements that like my view has shifted on as the years progressed. When I was younger, I was definitely like, yeah, that's a perfect relationship, and like that is what we should all strive for. And like, I definitely think, of course, it'd be wonderful. But I really think that it's unrealistic to expect relationships to have this standard of having no fights. And I also think it's important to remember that fights look different for everyone. So sometimes fights are like these, you know, big, stressful arguments, or sometimes fights are like being passive aggressive or like not talking for a day or something like that. So fights are going to look different in every relationship. And I also think it's important to remember that sometimes when you're not fighting, it's not because that there's not an issue or something like that. It can be a lack of communication, and it can sometimes feel like, oh, I don't want to cause a problem in my relationship. I don't want to upset my partner. It's not that big of a deal. And that's not necessarily healthy in itself, you know, to kind of be stuffing down those things, or if your partner is doing that for you. So sometimes when there's no conflict, it's because there's an avoidance of conflict within the relationship, and it can be hard to differentiate that from a healthy relationship. It can be hard to tell, like, maybe we are just really in sync and we communicate really well, or maybe it's just that, you know, we communicate so well, the couple things that are issues we don't want to bring up because we don't want to, you know, mess with the delicate balance that we have, you know, being so good and happy as it is. So it's really important to just stay engaged and critical in the relationship and in your own mind, and be like really honestly accountable, because we can trick ourselves even. We can even be like, you know, relationships are about compromise. So I'm not stuffing down my feelings. I'm compromising with someone that I love. But there are some things that, you know, at the end of the day, we don't actually want to compromise, and we're doing it in a way to kind of please someone else. And in the long run, that can kind of really hurt us.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone else? This was pretty comprehensive, so like that was a lot of really great information.
I'm glad you thought so. Like, this is probably my favorite thing to talk about. My poor younger siblings have probably heard this presentation a million times.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean. All right, well, I will be putting their both Rachel and Sophie's contact info in the video description, and I will be uploading a video tomorrow. So if you want to rewatch any part of it or send it to somebody, you know, it'll be there for you. Our phone number at the Health Collective is 860-278-4163. And we are open right now for our sexual health clinic on Mondays and Thursdays. Probably not tomorrow because there's a storm coming, but, and then we also have, you know, our dental clinic, and I'm always here to answer questions about health education. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. That was great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for those who. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say hi to my mom because I'm gonna tell her to watch it.
Awesome. I'll say hi to my mom and dad too then.
Yeah.
And my concerns.
All right. So have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, you as
Awesome.
well.
Bye, guys.